Hey everybody, and today we'll be looking at the German faction in the game Men of War Assault Squad. So before we get started, I want to talk about the general gist of German gameplay. And what it essentially comes down to is grabbing points, especially middle point, and effectively bunkering up or saving points so that you can bring out the heavy hitting tanks of Germany. Early game Germany isn't great, nor is it in middle. It's actually especially weak in the middle in my opinion. The whole purpose of the strategy is to just save up points and get the heavier tanks that your opponents cannot deal with effectively. So let's do lower tiered stuff first. Now you have a few types of infantry. Normally it's assault, regular, and paratroopers is what I typically tend to use. Assault is good, it's very good for doing its purpose, for assaulting urban positions such as this, very close quarters battles. It has the squad leader armed, the MP44, very good gun. Less rifles, more MP44s, so naturally it's good for close quarters fighting. You want to buy it if you are playing on an urban map as your starter unit, such as this one, or Nijmegen, Grand Suburb, Train Yard, Reloading Point, such and such. The other one is the regular squad, which has more rifles, more sandbags, and a devastating MG44 as soon as I can find it. So there we go, there it is. MG44 is the most expensive 42, sorry, my bad. MG in the game. It's also the most effective. The downside is that it is fairly heavy, so your guy will be pretty slowed down, and it runs out of ammunition fast. Nevertheless, it's the best MG in terms of mobile ones. Very useful for rural maps, things such as I don't know, Fields, Daberovka, that's another one. And yeah. Now typically, I like to think of there'd be 4 tiers of infantry, starting with Volkssturm, which would be the militia class, 0, 1s, 2s, and 3s. The class 2, where elite infantry tends to be rifle based, such as these ones have only rifles actually, apart from their 2 FG, these FG42s. Overall, this one's probably, if you are assaulting a very heavily defended position, I would use this. And I personally never go with the Panzer Grenadier squad because of the sheer cost of it. At the cost of one squad of assault infantry, you can, that's basically the base price. It's right around 100 points. Paratroopers bump that up to 250, which is not bad for what you're getting, but with the Panzer Grenadiers you're paying almost 400 points for them. 400 points that can easily net you a armored car or something to support your infantry, and an armored car would obviously be much better. Now, what are you getting if you buy the squad? Obviously you're getting a lot of STG-44s, and you are also getting some Panzerfausts. Trade-off isn't that great in my opinion. If you need assault capabilities, the assault squad or the paratroopers will do it, and generally the paratroopers are jack of all trades. And if you need long-term capability, the regular squad and paratroopers will do it, and that's why I typically don't use these. Now, let's pull over here. Going up, you have 3 different transport vehicles: the BMW R2, the Kolbo wagon, and the half-track. And I need to blow all these guys up.
Verstanden. Jawohl.
Let's play huddle around the TNT, guys.
Jawohl, jawohl, jawohl.
Oh, no, run back, run back. There we go. Moving forward. Sometimes you want to buy a vehicle and rush the early points. Most factions have both a Jeep and a motorcycle. Motorcycle for Germany is decent. It comes with 2 men, comes with a detachable MG42, and a good amount of ammo for it. Now, I'd like to tell you that the machine gunner actually costs the exact same as the motorcycle. All you're getting is that with the machine gunner, skill level for his MG is 2, and I think this one's also the same actually. No, it's also 1, so you're losing 1 on skill, and you don't really have that much ammunition. Overall, the trade-off isn't that great in terms of buying a MG over the Jeep, over the motorcycle, sorry. So, yeah, you are getting more accuracy with this one, but the point of the MG is just fire very fast at the enemy, so it doesn't really help. Moving on, Kobo Wagon, pretty much the same thing. It's a bit more expensive, coming in at 100 points. Same thing, you do get ammunition, and you do get more ammunition, and the crew skill, I believe, is the same as their motorcycle. The only real difference is that if you are using it as a mobile vehicle, you are getting much more turret traverse capability. It doesn't have a sharp little firing arc on it. And the biggest one that you have is the half-track. German half-track isn't that great compared to the other ones. Everything else can pretty much destroy it. It's useful for clearing out infantry, but overall it isn't that great. One of the uses I personally love half-tracks for is ramming down sandbags. So say if they pop it up like that, well, we just grab the half-track and drive right through it. Like that. Obviously you want a little bit more speed, but yeah. 3 types of trucks. They're pretty self-explanatory. The ammunition truck's only 50 points, so if you need to tow around a gun or something, that's always useful. But then again, it really comes down to if you have the points to spare. And yeah, going up a notch. Defenses, I won't talk about these very much. I think I'll do them in a separate video. Overall, pretty much the same for most factions. Yeah. Alright, light vehicles. You have the Panzer Ostaf B and these 3 as the starter ones. I would normally go with the SDKFZ 222. With the 20mm flak on top, very helpful in supporting infantry, because these 2 vehicles actually only come on with MG42s, so they're not great if the enemy is in stone cover. They're decent if you can keep them alive, and overall not great. Now the Lutch and the 222 actually cost the same. Lutch has more armor, 30mm on the front, while the armored vehicle has, I don't know, I think it's 14 or something like that. So it's not that strong. 20 on the body. Let's see what the Lutch is. 30. If you need the extra protection, obviously go with the Lutch. If you need more mobility, I would always go with the 222. The 222 can resist AT rifle fire from the front at least, simply because of its shape, but it really takes them from the side and the back. In reality, the 30 millimeters of armor you get on the Lutch won't protect you from much, apart from very light autocannon fire and AT rifles, so it really comes down to situation, but in general, I would always go with Lutch, with the Panzer 222, simply because, well, you're fast enough to speed away from anything that might be able to kill you. Puma is not that great. It's useful as a rusher vehicle to strike artillery and other things, not very useful as a tank in general. Only comes with 30 millimeters of armor, so yeah, it's not the greatest. Now you move up to the dedicated AA vehicles like the Flak Panzer and the Wirbelwind. Now look at this thing. So you get 20 millimeter flak gun, less armor, and it's quite vulnerable. Then you realize that Panzer 222 actually has the same gun, so now you might be wondering why you would ever buy this. Now, if you notice that Flak Panzer can actually put out more rounds of fire per reload, as well as more range. Wirbelwind's just an extension of that. Not terribly great in my opinion, simply because of how the gun is shaped. I guess we would have to get into armor and the armored capabilities of the vehicles for that. All vehicles have a ballistic shape and different armor values depending on the part on the vehicle. Now, with the Wirbelwind, any shot through the turret will typically knock the gun out, along with the turret, obviously. And because it's such a big target, it's generally not the greatest vehicle to use. You can do without it. Flak Panzer is just great. Let's move up. Alright, so medium tanks. The Ost-F and the Ost-F1, these are infantry support tanks. They are not meant to fight actual tanks. They have a low velocity cannon. While the caliber is big, it actually has horrible penetration. So that leaves us with three types of tanks for the mid-game. The Ost-F-J, Ost-F-G, and H. The J is typically going to be the first tank that you get. 50 millimeters of armor on the front. Puny gun, but it's alright for the early middle game. It's decent, good for infantry support, and it does its role quite well actually. It's really just a jack of all trades. And then you move up to the Panzer Ost-F-G, which has 50 millimeters of armor on the front, but a bigger gun. The gun's actually bigger on the Panzer G than it is on the Panzer H. The only downside is that it doesn't have as much armor and the range is the same. So now you can switch up to the Panzer H, which has more armor and it has these skirts. Now the skirts actually have quite a little bit of usage because they tend to block out shots from Panzer Panzerfausts and rocket launchers in general. One shot made it through and got the tracks, but do an alright role in protecting the tank. Don't think that you actually have more armor on the sides simply because you have the plates there. It doesn't really work out. So yeah. Most people I see who are starting out tend to use the Panzer G, thinking that it's great, but overall it's just overshadowed by the H simply because of the armor value. Typically you'll be playing America versus Germany, and what would happen with G is that a Stuart can penetrate it very easily. Mid-game, USA relies on use of the Hellcat and the 76 caliber gun that's on the EZ-8, as well as the Wolverine and the M5 gun. At its maximum range, which is 150, it has a penetration of 44, I think. No, sorry, not 44, around 78-ish. Not sure about that. Might know how to go and search that up. But I do know that at its max range it cannot penetrate the front of the Panzer H unless you hit it right on the viewports, and that is that's still very unlikely. So it's useful in the sense that it can survive longer than the other tank, the Panzer G, but if you do know how to correctly handle a tank in direct control, the G would be a better choice. One thing that you have to note for all of the Panzer IV series is that they all have very weak side armor, only at 30 millimeters. If you do fight one of these, try to go for side shots if you cannot go for frontal shots. In fact, try to hit the sides from, by shooting through walls just to hit the side armor. It'd be much better than shooting at the front, especially on the G if you cannot penetrate it. Moving up to the later tiered game, you have the Tiger, the Panther, and the King Tiger. King Tiger actually costs a good 3/4 of your money. If you play in an organized team, sometimes there will be King Tiger Sabers, which will save up simply to get that tank. Tiger it's overall decent in general. Has a good gun, decent frontal armor. Viewports are weak, though. There's nothing really much to say about it. I mean, in general, if you have like 90 penetration or something while fighting one of these from the front, try to hit it on the viewports. Now, this little gap right here, right below the turret, and between the coaxial and the actual viewport itself is fairly weak. You can strike it there and you might get penetration. Don't ever try to hit the bottom of the tank right around here. That does not work. Show that actually. Going up, you have the Panther. Panther has a good frontal block of 70 millimeters of armor, sloped, so that's roughly doubling it. It's very strong on the bottom plate. Turret is only at 100 or so millimeters, so if you've ever fight one of them, try to always aim for the turret. Yeah. I always try to buy the Panther over the Tiger, but it does have the inherent weakness inside the turret. Overall, it has also a fairly brittle side armor, so try to keep it facing forward. If you're facing it forward, you probably won't have any problems apart from turret damage and main gun damage. Moving up to the King Tiger, there's really nothing much. I don't think I had to say much about it. I mean, like, it's a decent tank. Well, actually, it's a fucking fantastic tank. I had to knock out my own tanks to make up CP for it. Give me a second. There we go. King Tiger, it's slow, it has one of the biggest guns in the game, and looking at the game files, the frontal armor cannot be penetrated by anything inside the game. So your question will probably be, now how the fuck are we supposed to deal with this? Well, personally I enjoy using bazookas and officers. Track the thing and shoot the flare gun at it. Or you can go with the bazooka, which is a little more dangerous, but it's typically pretty effective. Now you'll notice that even with 180 penetration, dings off the front. Let's buy another one of those. Side armor, you typically want to shoot right around here, right above the tracks, these little plates here, right above those, and typically aiming at the back. If you can only shoot it at the front, try to get it right there. Now, it might not look like it has armored skirts, but these things tend to do the same thing as the plates, the side plates on the Panzer H, in which it will basically absorb the Panzer, the rockets.
Verstanden.
Let's see how many times I can hit this thing without my rockets going in. Track damage.
Jawohl.
Okay, 3 times.
Verstanden.
Turret, you can aim for the turret. Really isn't all that much. It'll destroy the turret, but that's probably it. I guess this tank's already fried, so we can't do that.
Jawohl.
Moving on to tank destroyers, you have the Hetzer, the Stug, the Nashorn, the Jet Panther, and the Elephant, and the Jet Tiger. Hetzer was, and still is, a pretty good early game tank destroyer. Has a good frontal plate, but very weak armor on the sides and on the top. Now, it has 60 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken, of frontal armor. Sloped, you get roughly around 80 or 80 to 120 from it, depending on the place. So it's very strong on the front. However, it is weak on the underplating, and that's where you want to be aiming at if you are shooting at one of these. This tank has good range for an early game tank destroyer with 150. Decent gun. It's weak, but if you manage to track the enemy with its range, you probably will do very nicely with it. Has a little MG on top that's rotatable, remotely controlled from the inside. Good for spraying down the tank from enemy infantry. Moving on, you have the Stug. It's decent. One of the best tank destroyers in the game. Good gun, decent armor, alright ballistic shape. Has those side plates to deal with bazookas. But the main problem with this vehicle is its ballistic shape. Now, 2 places that I typically aim for the tank is up here and down here. It's fairly easily tracked compared to the other tanks, and has a problem with the superstructure in that if you hit it near the top, sometimes it will use the top armor value instead of the front armor value, and obviously the complications of that is that top armor isn't as heavy. Moving on, Nashorn has the biggest gun in the game. It's only outclassed by super tanks such as the Jet Tiger, which is a bit excessive. This thing shoots at the max range of any tank possible, which is 180. Devastating long reload time, and the thing has decent amounts of armor. It has 30 slope on the front, enough to withstand very light guns and flak, but obviously not enough to take on a tank. How this vehicle is used is that it's a sniper tank. Later in the game, you'll be able to remember the values, the range values of tanks, such as a Pershing only has 160, a Tiger has, sure what Tiger has actually, 160 as well, and you go from there. So being that a Pershing only has 160 and you outclass them by 20 meters or 20 in-game units, that means you can get closer by a bit and increase that penetration to wherever you need and then fire. It's a very deadly tank, but it's also very fragile. Jet Panzer is a heavily armed little beast. Decent gun, very good armor, almost impenetrable, has side skirts, it's vulnerable to being tracked. That's pretty much it. Its gun is decent for taking on most things. If you're fighting the Americans or the Japanese, you'll typically be using this. There's no reason to bump up to the Jet Panther apart from the occasional Jumbo or the Horai 2, which is, if you're playing correctly, you shouldn't be having to deal with those. Just a lot of crewmen. Moving up to the Jet Panther, it is pretty much all the flaws of the Panther removed because it doesn't have a turret, armed with a bigger gun, and armor is still the same on the front, but it has slope, so it's alright. Also has these little side plates, not the greatest. I mean, anybody with a decent mind would shoot up here with bazookas, but enough to cock block the so that's great. This is typically what you want to be using to take out heavier tanks, primarily if you're playing against Russia or the UK, where they are also pretty heavily armored. The thing with these open top vehicles, you can actually throw grenades into them and blow them up that way, and kind of eliminates the need for AT grenades. I mean, I had a game where I took out a Hummel and a Lost because they were sitting next to each other and I had two normal frag grenades. So yeah. What else haven't we covered? Wasp and Hummel, like I just said, watch out for that. Panzerwerfer, fairly weak on the front. Don't take the thing into combat. I don't think I need to go in depth with that. Jet Tiger and Elephant, basically bigger versions of the Jet Panther. Personally, they have no use. The money going into buying one of these could be better spent buying other things. Specialized soldiers, I don't think I really need to talk about. Pretty basic. And I guess we're done. So yeah.